Welcome, everybody. My name's Cassie Sofing, and I am joined by Dr. Rusty Lowe and Liz Burke, members of the Globe Mission Mosquito team. And we are so happy to welcome Dr. Nikki Hoffman Grant.
So I'd like to take this time to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Nikki Grant-Hoffman. I got to know Nikki because we did a Globe Plus Post workshop series led by the embassy in Costa Rica, supporting some countries in Central America and the Caribbean, excuse me, in response to the dengue crisis that is happening in this region. Nikki is just fantastic. She is an education specialist and she's a science co-lead for the Bureau of Land Management headquarters, and she works actually in Colorado, USA, but she was on special assignment as an embassy fellow for the U.S. Embassy in Costa Rica, and she provided a significant amount of time and energy to produce for us some new resources that we can use to improve and increase participation in mosquito surveillance. And we just did a presentation in Spanish, and it was absolutely fantastic. And now Nikki has agreed, being the bilingual person she is, to do the same presentation now in English for us. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nikki. And Nikki, please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my mute moved around, so I had to find it. So hopefully my screen is sharing now. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming. And as Rusty said, my name is Nikki Grant-Hoffman. I'm an education specialist and ecologist with the Bureau of Land Management, and I've been working as an embassy science fellow for several months with the team at Globe and at NASA, and with the embassy out of San Jose, Costa Rica, which is a regional embassy that works with several countries. So a little bit about the fellowship itself. So the embassy in Costa Rica identified this project and specifically working with the Globe program and working with it in schools. And they had certain objectives that they wanted to meet. So they wanted to use NASA's Globe, which is Global Learning and Observations to Benefit the Environment program. The guide that I've worked on is providing suggestions for the use of environmental education and citizen science in schools, specifically to address school curriculum. And then also promoting the increased incorporation of applied science education, specifically in primary school curriculum. So why these things specifically? So getting at some of the benefits of why we would look at these particular components to the project. So first, starting with environmental education, there are a number of benefits to environmental education just in general, and using environmental education as a tool in schools. But specifically, it can improve education results and empower students, improve understanding of environmental topics. And I'm sorry, I give this talk in Spanish a lot, so I'm kind of struggling with it in English somehow. And then it also can have positive impacts on mental and physical health and youth. So when students are outside and they can see and touch and smell and hear all the things that are going on in their environment, that can really help solidify a lot of those concepts that they're learning from, class lectures and books and activities. And then just the act of being outside can have a real positive impact. Moving around and things obviously is going to have physical, impacts on health, but also mental, impacts on mental health, just kind of the act of being outside and spending some time outside. So there are a number of benefits to environmental education and kind of using your local environment to really solidify some of the concepts that you might be learning in a classroom. So citizen science, first of all, starting with a little bit of a definition. So citizen science is when participants contribute time, effort, knowledge, or experience to scientific investigations. This type of science is really essential for projects or problems that are large. So for example, if you have a scientist or a group of scientists that are collecting data, there's a limited amount of data that they can collect. But if you have, just kind of everyday people collecting data, the amount of data that you can get really is magnified quite a bit. And especially in today's age, when we have the capacity to analyze a lot of that data, that's really essential for a lot of the problems that we're dealing with that are very large and that move very quickly. So again, just kind of using the power of people to work together to find information and also solutions to some of these really big problems and challenges that we're facing. So the benefits of using citizen science in kind of a classroom setting It can really empower participants and give them a sense of connection with other participants. So for students, this can mean other, students in your class. This can mean other people in your country. And with a program like Globe, it can mean, other students and peers globally. It can also improve understanding of scientific topics and connect the things that you're learning with real life. So it's a way for students to really participate in science. So versus just, for example, learning about the scientific method or learning about a scientific project, they're really participating and being active learners and participants in science. Then they're also seeing how science is being used to address issues and problems that are going on in real life and things that they may be dealing with in their lives or in their communities. So why the GLOBE program? For one, this is a program that has already been in use in many of these countries. So there are, teachers and folks in these countries that are very familiar with this program and that have used a lot of the different modules. It is a program that is focused, it's global, and it's focused on citizen science and education. So there are a lot of resources that are already available through the GLOBE program for education and then also for citizen science. And specifically for this project, because of some of the disease considerations in these areas, and the diseases specifically that are passed by mosquitoes, this guide really focuses on that mosquito portion of the GLOBE program. Obviously there are other protocols, but this guide is specifically focused on the kind of mosquito habitat mapper. GLOBE also has a lot of data that's readily available, and this can be really great as a classroom tool. I'll get into that in a little bit. And as I said, there are a number of educational resources. And so this guide really it just kind of organizes many of those and really leverages a lot of the stuff that's already been developed for the GLOBE program. Okay, so an introduction to the guide. So this guide is really meant to be a way to make it easier for teachers and for folks wanting, and this is kind of specifically for, one of the things the embassy wanted was specifically for use in school. So it is kind of aimed towards, teachers and folks who are going to be working in a classroom setting, but it can really be used, any way folks want to use it. But the idea is that it would make it easier for teachers to begin a new program. So, teachers have a lot going on and a lot that they're doing and a lot that they're dealing with. And it can be really difficult to, kind of do all of the research and have all of the time necessary to really get something brand new started in a classroom, especially something that may be unfamiliar or have a lot of things that you need to get through. So hopefully the guide makes it easier for a teacher to begin a program using citizen science and using GLOBE specifically in a classroom setting. The activities that I put in there are suggestions. Teachers can pick and choose. There's no reason they have to use all of them. You can kind of, teachers can kind of use what works in their classroom. And if there are other things that don't work or don't match up, then, there's no reason you can't just take portions of it and use it. And most of the materials that are in it, most of the education materials and activities come directly from GLOBE. There are some new things in there, but there are a lot of, it also does point to a lot of already existing activities and resources that are available through the GLOBE program. So components of the guide is organized by levels or by grades. So for example, levels 1 through 3 or kindergarten through 2nd grade, all the way up to high school. And so there are activities that are age appropriate, kind of based on specifically the Costa Rican curriculum, but certainly there are lots of similarities in what students are learning at different ages and, across many different countries. But it's organized by level. And again, suggestions if a teacher decides that there's something that's listed for 4 through 6, but their 3rd graders can handle it, then great. And if you kind of want to do some review for your 6th graders and pull something from the level 1 through 3, then that's also fine. They're just suggestions. It's also organized by kind of different activities that you can do. So for example, there are classroom activities listed. So these could be things like different readings, games that can be played in the classroom. There are activities that use technology, so generally computers, and this can be working with GLOBE data and some of the things that are available kind of on the computer. And then there are activities that can be done outside. So this could be outside of the school. The picture here is a group of students just outside of their classroom, kind of doing some activities. Or these could also be activities that could be done, for example, on like a field trip. And kind of the culmination of most of these activities is actually using the GLOBE app and contributing to the data set and kind of going through the citizen science activity itself. So examples from the guide. The guide itself is, I think, around 50 pages these days, so I'm not going to go through everything, but just kind of give you an example of some of the types of activities that I pulled in from the different things that are available for the different grades. So, for example, in the early levels, one of the things that was being addressed, at least in the Costa Rican curriculum, was life cycles of different organisms. And so, using the life cycle of a mosquito, you can kind of talk about life cycles. You can talk about, you know, that mosquitoes go through eggs, larvae, pupa, and adult life cycle as a way to talk about just life cycles of plants and animals in general. There's also this Zikazyme resource that's available. It's a really fun little comic book. It has lots of great information about mosquito life cycles and about the diseases that they carry and kind of some of how that works. And so this is something that can be read, you know, either by the teacher or individually, you know, as a resource for students. You know, I talked about some of the technology uses. So for this level, as they're learning about, you know, that mosquito life cycle and that you can find mosquitoes in kind of different forms, you know, whether it's an egg, a pupa, adult, a larva, then you get to go on a scavenger hunt where you go to the Globe webpage where the data is available. You know, you're kind of learning about mapping and different things like that. And as you're doing that, you're clicking through all of the data, looking to see if you can find a photo of a mosquito egg, a mosquito larva, a mosquito pupa, and a mosquito adult. So, you know, you can be kind of zooming around the world looking for these different photos. And then here's just an example of, for example, if a student found this, you know, point, then they could say, oh, you know, I found the mosquito larva picture, and being able to recognize that. As you move up in levels 4 through 6, you might do a lot of those similar activities, but something you may add would be an activity about magnification specifically. And this could be, you know, with a microscope, with a hand lens, with the magnification that's available on for the that you can clip onto your telephone, your cell phone, and, you know, looking at different things under magnification, and then using that eventually to potentially look at mosquito larvae. Levels 7 through 9, there are some other suggested readings. So the Zikazyme is still a really great resource. You know, you can use it, I think, in any level, but there's a slightly more advanced reading that might be available, this Beyond the Bite, that talks a little bit more about diseases and some of the different species of mosquito that might carry those. So that might be a reading that would be a little bit more appropriate for some of these older students. And then also building a mosquito larva trap. So in the younger grades, some of the activities that are suggested are, you know, maybe the teacher building it as a demonstration and, you know, kind of having like a class couple of traps, or building it in small groups. And then at this level, this is something that probably the students could do on their own. They could build one and have it at home and bring it in, you know, kind of different activities and different ways of using that same resource based on the different levels. And then as we get into the upper levels into high school, some of the things that we would do is for some of the technology. So apart from kind of looking at the data and the maps, they would also potentially do some downloading of data and kind of working with the data and kind of getting into some mini projects or kind of scientific investigations using the data that's already available in addition to collecting their own data. So, and with this, as they're doing that, there are opportunities through the GLOBE program, for example, the International Virtual Science Symposium, where the students could go and present the data. And that really helps solidify that connection that I talked about with citizen science, because they would be talking with, you know, other students, other peers, kind of hearing about their research, talking with other scientists, and kind of seeing the types of questions and things that they're looking at. So kind of the last thing here, just recently I was in Panama and Costa Rica working on a validation of the guide. So kind of along with folks from the embassy, kind of going around to different classrooms, different grades of classes, and working with different teachers, and also working with folks in like Ministry of Education to kind of talk through the guide, talk through some of the activities, and kind of see how it would work for the different levels and in kind of different classroom settings. And so with that, you know, currently I'm kind of working on hopefully kind of some of the final tweaks to that guide, kind of making it as useful as it can be. The guide was developed in Spanish. I'm also in the process of translating it back to English so that it will be available for really whoever wants to use it, but also for some of the Caribbean countries that the embassy supports. And then, you know, maybe in a few weeks to a month or so, once I'm able to kind of get those last edits done, then the embassy will do kind of the final editing and then kind of, you know, publish it, and then it would be available through the embassy, and I think also on the Globe webpage. So yeah, I think that's all I have. So if there are any questions or discussion, I'm happy to talk through that now. Thanks.
Have a question. I'm just wondering, how did the kids do at that level 1 through 3 on the scavenger hunt using the visualization studio? How'd that go?
So this was actually something that we weren't able to test out while we were there because we didn't have enough computer and internet access. So that was one activity that we weren't able to test. So I will say because of that, I've added in some other activities, assuming that the school has no internet or very limited internet or computer access. So we weren't able to test that, but I hope that, where students do have access to computers and reliable access to internet, that it will be a fun way for them to kind of get an introduction to some of the data and some of the technology and, kind of poking around a map and data.
I think sometimes we underestimate what kids' ability at the younger ages for solving the problems that seem. I think or gave permission for the folks online to ask any questions. So feel free to unmute and ask if you have any questions of Nikki and the project. I'm going to drop in the chat again the link to where we host our webinar recordings, and both of them will be available sometime tomorrow-ish, both in Spanish and English. And I think Nikki's agreed to share her slides. Yes, okay. And then when she has her curriculum translated and where she wants it to be, we are happy to host it also.
Sure. Translate.
Oh, thank you very much, Nikki. Rusty, anything?
I had a question for Nikki about her involvement in this and how she got to be an embassy fellow for this work. It seems to me that this would be a kind of opportunity we'd like to give a lot more scientists, to assist the embassies who are trying to support Globe. How did they contact you, and how did you get involved in that, Nikki?
Yeah, so the Embassy Science Fellowship program has been around for a while, and essentially it matches government scientists. So folks who are employed by the United States government with different projects that embassies have asked for expertise in from whichever U.S. embassy. So there was kind of an email that went around saying, hey, these are the Embassy Science Fellowship programs or project requests for this year. And if you think you have the expertise to address any of these, then you can, kind of submit an application, kind of your resume and a little blurb on, why you think you'd be good at working on whichever project. And so when I saw this one about citizen science, I've worked a lot with citizen science. I've worked with citizen science in school groups. And so I submitted my application and then was matched with the program. And I think it's been interesting. I will say, as I work for the Bureau of Land Management. I don't work for NASA, and while I have some familiarity with Globe, it's not a program I'd worked with a ton. I'd worked more in some of the other apps that are available with some of the work that I've done. So I do think that kind of coming in a little bit cold and not being super familiar with all of the resources, just kind of in my own struggling to get things organized and kind of figure out where they would fit and all of that. I think that kind of led to making this more of a guide versus just kind of adding more curriculum, because there really is a lot of really fabulous curriculum and activities that's already been developed. And as I started looking through that, it was hard for me to think of something, that would be really great and novel and new. And there are some new things in there, the scavenger hunt and other things that I've added, but there was just so much great stuff that was already available. Just kind of organizing it in this guide was helpful for me. And I hope that, other teachers and folks wanting to use this program, but maybe not quite sure where to start, I hope that they will find it helpful as well.
Thank you. I think those are really good insights. And I do think that because you came in a little bit cold, but with an understanding of the power of citizen science, because you were very well versed in that you were able to sort of leverage everything in a way that was really made a lot of sense. And this is going to be such a great resource for our entire community. So I'll just thank you, Nikki, for that. Great.
Well, I hope so. I hope that folks find it useful.
I'm super excited. I think Rusty and I were talking earlier. This would be a great guide for somebody who is just getting started and not sure exactly how to put a program in place for different audiences. And it could be used in informal settings also.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think it's a place to start, and then kind of the possibilities are limitless, if you will. It's a way to kind of get started as folks kind of get more comfortable and more kind of steeped in what's going on. They may take things in a totally different direction than I did in the guide. And I think that is, completely great and absolutely what should happen. But I think hopefully it makes that first step a little bit lower for just kind of getting started and getting into it. And then, folks can kind of take it in whichever direction they would like and works for them. But I hope that it allows more people to feel like they can kind of start and, have the time and the know-how and can kind of get started with it. So that was kind of my goal when I started working with this. So hopefully that's how, hopefully it will be helpful for folks to do that.
I agree. Well, thank you very much for spending time with your presentation and doing the 2 sessions. It's going to be a great resource that people will have a chance to look at. Liz, Rusty, any final comments?
No, but Nikki, we would love for you to come back and talk to us again sometime about some of the work that you're doing, and maybe also in other kinds of citizen science. I think it'd be very, very interesting. So you're a fantastic presenter. I have to say, this was just one of the real top presentations we've had in this series. So thank you again.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me. Thanks everyone, and feel free to reach out with questions, comments, and I'll send the presentation to Cassie, and hopefully the guide will be available relatively soon.
Perfect. Thank you
Great.
very much for your time.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you, everybody, and we will see you in 2024.
Bye-bye.